Hi there, it's Tracy Kiernan, and this acrylic painting tutorial is going to show you how to paint Cozy Camp Morning with acrylics on an 11 by 14 inch canvas. Let's go over brushes and colors. So you'll only need two brushes for this, a 3/4 inch flat brush and a number 4 round brush. These are Princeton Velvet Touch brushes. And there's only 7 colors that we'll be using for this. So titanium white, Hooker's green, hue, permanent, phthalo blue, cadmium yellow medium hue, alizarin crimson, light blue permanent, and Mars black. There is no traceable required for this painting, but I will be using a piece of chalk to draw some of the feet and the blanket and the tent, so that is helpful for that step. Let's go ahead and get started. I am going to first load my paint palette with light blue permanent and titanium white, and we are going to paint the sky of this painting first. So the sky is just a basic light blue sky, and without worrying about where the tent is going to be, we're just going to paint the entire canvas, knowing that the tent's going to be painted over some of this, and that's okay. So we're going to start at the top of the canvas with just the light blue, and this is the 3/4 flat brush. I'm going to do big left and right paint strokes, and I'm actually going to make my sky go a little bit in a curved direction, so it's kind of curving upwards. And you saw me already grab this titanium white, and I'm blending this in. So when you go down a few inches with that light blue, start introducing your white into that color, and it's going to, so we want our sky to get gradually lighter as we go down. I'm going to go about halfway. I didn't measurement, I'm just estimating. And if I go down too far with my sky, I can always paint over it, but I want to go down probably about halfway to the halfway point in the middle of the canvas. So this is blending. We don't have to blend it all the way. It also doesn't have to be perfectly curved. So it is kind of in a curved direction, but it's not like the same throughout. One of the things about this background is because we're looking at it through a tent, it does not have to be super detailed. A lot of the detail work is going to happen in the socks and the little coffee mug that we're going to have and some of the tents. So that's kind of the front of the painting. And then everything back here, we can be very simple about it, which is kind of nice because it makes things easier. So right here, I'm about at the halfway point. My paint strokes are now going kind of flat. And I'm just kind of blending it upwards, but not over blending it because I like the different variations that this blue and white create in the sky. So I went maybe a little bit more than halfway down this. So maybe go down a little bit more than halfway. Some of this mountain will cover part of the sky. So we're going to do the mountain next. So the mountain ranges in this have these different layers of blue and green and gray. So we're going to start with our furthest mountain. And this one is going to be kind of a blue-gray color. So I have the color Phthalo Blue, and I'm mixing it with about equal parts titanium white, and then a little bit of black in there, a little bit of water to kind of thin this down. So it's kind of a bluish gray. You don't want to do equal parts black because then it'll make it too dark. I'm going to use the tip of the brush to kind of outline the mountain line. So the line for the mountain is at about the halfway point in the canvas. So that's where I started with this mountain. And I'm having it dip down over here on the right because that's where my sun is going to be. But then on the left, it kind of dips up and then back down again. And then I stopped about 4 inches over here on the left. So there's a gap. So just fill that in solid. And then grab your white. So there's a larger mountain range way back here. This one's going to be taller than that blue-gray one. So this one, without rinsing the brush, I'm just grabbing the white. Actually, I'm going to add just a teeny bit of black in there. So it's more of a gray color. And this one, it should be a relatively light gray too. It shouldn't be very dark because this one is far away. So this one kind of angles upwards. And then we're going to fill it in solid, very thin layer of paint. And then I overlapped this blue-gray mountain. So I'm going to go back and redo this part right here, because that gray one is the furthest mountain. So this blue one is in front. Then let's load our paint palette with Hooker's Green Hue. There's a lot of green in this landscape, so we're going to start introducing this green without rinsing the brush. Add just a teeny bit of green to your brush. So this is going to mix with whatever's left on our brush. We have that gray, maybe a little bit blue on our brush. I'm actually going to, on purpose, add just a teeny bit of blue into this green. I just want to make this faraway hill kind of bluish green in color and darker, because our foreground, our front green area is going to be kind of a light yellow green. So I want this to be darker so it can stand out from the other part of the green landscape. I'm just taking this is kind of a low sort of mountain range. This is going to overlap part of our blue hill, our blue mountain that's in the background behind it. So it doesn't go very high. I'm just using the tip of the brush to kind of define that mountain range. Take that green and start filling that in solid. At this point, the bottom of this mountain is kind of flat. So I'm going to take this as I'm painting the bottom of it, making it more flat on the bottom. It's going to go all the way across. If we want to, we can even add little bits of blue in there to blend more blue in there, or white if you want to lighten it. It should still stand out. It shouldn't be like close to the color of the blue mountain, so it should stand out. Next, I'm going to add the color Cadmium Yellow Medium Hue to my brush. So we'll call this yellow. Without rinsing the brush, I'm going to take this, I'm going to mix some white into it. So there was green and blue on my brush. You basically just need to make this kind of light yellow-green color. It should be lighter than this. So if I paint it over this, it should show up. And I'm just doing this kind of hill that overlaps the bottom of that green mountain. And this, if we need to add more white to it to get it to show up, we can add more white to that. This whole area from here down, I'm going to add more white to my palette. The rest of the canvas is going to be this yellowish green color. And that's our foreground in our landscape, that light yellow-green kind of meadow area that's just outside of the tent. And it doesn't have to be, so I wanted this to be just a big curved hill, but over here on the left, because I didn't go down far enough with that green mountain, I had to kind of bring it up to the left a little bit more. So it's flat, but a little bit hilly. Some more yellow. Blend this, a little bit more white. So I'm making this a little bit lighter in the distance, and then as I work my way down, I'm going to add more green to my brush to make this a little bit darker at the bottom. So this green is going to blend with our light color in the distance, but it's still more of like a yellowish green. It's not a dark green. So I can take more white, blend more white into this. I can even take some more yellow, blend more yellow into this. So it's kind of a dark yellowish green. So one thing I'm doing with this is not blending color all the way. So I'm leaving the streaks of yellow and white unblended. And then down here, again, I mentioned I wanted this to get darker. So I'm going to take the green, I'm going to bring this all the way to the bottom. We're not worrying about where the blanket / sleeping bag will be, where the feet are. That's going to be painted over, especially this whole bottom area. That's all going to be painted over. So for now, we're just going to do kind of solid green down there. I'm going to go back with this yellow and white. Make this kind of light yellowish green area back here. And next we're going to rinse this brush off, set it to the side, and you'll need your number 4 round brush. Load your palette with the color Mars Black and some fresh Hooker's Green Hue. So we are going to paint the trees next, and I am going to start by making a super dark green. These are almost just silhouette trees. In fact, if you want to just do all black silhouette trees to make things easier, you can. I'm just adding green in there to give it some more color than just pure black tree. And so with this tree, I'm going to start, this is going to be the largest tree in the painting. So we're going to start on kind of at the top of this light yellow-green hill. And I like to do a vertical line first. So with the round brush, I'm just going to do a very large vertical line. This goes way up and goes over the light blue mountain in the distance. Then I'm just going to start forming these branches. So I'm just kind of, I started at the top, I'm just kind of dragging this dark green color downwards, little tiny paint strokes, not very big paint strokes, just dragging it down and outwards in this like curved direction, little paint strokes. And then as I go down, so I'm also loading my brush in different amounts of black and green to get a little bit of variation in color. As I go down and making my branches go a little bit wider, all the way to the bottom, kind of make that tree skirt, but we don't see the trunk. If you want to repaint the trunk so you can see the trunk, you can. I just left it like that. So it's kind of a narrow pine tree. I'm going to do the same thing. There's going to be another little guy to the left of it, but this one's not going to be as tall. So vertical line. And then go back and do your little branches. You're just doing little paint strokes that curve downwards and outwards. Your tree gets wider as you work your way down. I'm going to do another tree. So you want to think about perspective in your landscape. If you're doing trees that are kind of way back here on this mountain, they're not going to be very tall. They're going to be smaller because they're further away. So this one is the same technique, only a lot shorter. So I did two right next to each other. They're very, very short. Some might be so far away where they're just little vertical lines. So it's a really, really simple way to paint far away trees. Just do little vertical marks, and you can even try to make them more triangular. So they're like thicker at the bottom and thinner at the top. And it's fun to add blue in there. So you can add blue to those trees because they're further away. That was phthalo blue that I added, so that dark blue. So let's do another set of larger trees over here. So pretty much the large trees are on the light yellow-green flat hill area. Smaller trees are on the dark green hill area, and we really don't see any trees on the blue hill or the gray hill. For this tree, I'm doing the same technique, but I'm adding more of the phthalo blue. So it's kind of phthalo blue, green, and black mixed together. Gives it this pretty bluish green color in the tree. And I'll do another one. So you want to vary your tree heights. I am not going to do any trees below this kind of area. So the lower part of our painting is going to be reserved for our feet tent area. Any detail work that we paint down here, down at the bottom, might end up being covered up. So we're going to leave that area blank for now. Do more little triangular marks way in the distance. That's all the trees I'm going to add for now. We can always add more later, but I'm going to do the sun next. So we're going to do a very simple sun. And so I'm going to do titanium white, and we need the yellow. So cad yellow, medium. I have this on there, so that's not mixed with green. So some fresh yellow. Take your finger and mix your white and yellow together about equal amounts. And then over here in this area of the sky where we have that kind of dip in the mountain, we're just going to take this and we're going to smear a big blurry yellow circle. And then take your round brush all cleaned off. And then you want pure titanium white. You're going to paint a small white circle in the middle of that, and we have our basic sun. In this next step, we will be drawing our tent and socks, and for the most part, the part that we're going to be drawing on should be dry. So if it's really wet, wait for it to dry. Come back to this step. I'm going to use a piece of chalk. So I'm going to do a rounded tent opening, and in the upper left and upper right corner, we're doing curved line. On the left, we see more, so it's asymmetrical here. We see more of that curve on the left, but on the right, it's going to be cut off the side of the canvas. And then we have a tent opening piece. This is going to be that dark blue piece. So two curves on the left and the right, and they kind of meet in the middle with a little bit of a gap on the top edge of the canvas. And then down here, we have our blanket or sleeping bag, and this is going to cut across the bottom of the canvas. It's going to go up maybe 1.5 inches from the bottom edge of the canvas, and it's going to overlap the tent because this part is on the inside of the tent and the opening should be behind it. And we can start sketching the feet out. So I found it helpful to kind of look at my feet or put socks on your feet, and you can kind of like position how your feet would be, and then you can just sketch. Keep it really simple. It doesn't have to be super realistic. Just sketch kind of the shape of the toes, inside of the sock, the heel, arch. So just kind of position your feet and then just sketch the shape that you see. The feet aren't very big, so the toes really don't go much higher than the yellow-green hill, and they don't go any higher than our dark green mountain range in the background. We don't see the ankles or leg. The blanket really is on the very, very edge of the ankle, like covering the ankle. You can do more feet. You can make this like a family painting. I just did 2 pairs. And both very similar directions, even though the socks are both going to have like different colors. I pretty much just kind of copied both pairs. They're both pretty much going in the same direction, relatively the same shapes. Just kind of makes it easier. I'm going to sketch my little coffee mug too. Even though a lot of this is going to be painted over, I just want to kind of make sure I have the positioning right, make sure I have room for it. And if you want, you can do other things in there, like a lantern. If you're feeling really brave, you can do like a campfire. Next, I am going to paint the tent, and I'm going to need some fresh water for this because I don't want any of that other muddy colors to mix with my yellow. I want a really nice, pretty pure yellow for this. I'm going to use a 3/4 flat. I'm going to mix yellow and white together. This is the Cad Yellow Medium and Titanium White. And I'm going to do this in a curved direction. So each of the corners, big curved paint strokes, defining the edge of the tent opening. If this ends up painting over part of your tree, that's okay. That's kind of the point. And right here, curved corner. Also, if it ends up being a little bit translucent, that's okay. It could be that the tint is a little bit see-through, but because we're adding white to this, it should show up relatively opaque. I'm gonna take this curved, paint that in. Sometimes it helps to use the tip of the brush to define it first and then fill it in. And then down here, we do end up overlapping part of this coffee mug. And also we're going over the blanket area. So later on, we can paint the blanket area over this to really make it look like that's the part that should be inside the tent. But for now, we're just defining our tent. We're doing this in layers from backwards to forwards. I did go back and add more little streaks of titanium white in there just for really pretty color variation. It really brightens that yellow up when you mix white into it, but I didn't blend it all the way, so we have some streaks of white in there. I'm going to rinse, and I'm going to do the blue tent kind of opening that's behind. So this part is kind of tied open, and this part is going to be behind the yellow part. But right now I'm just going to do it solid blue. This is Phthalo Blue. Use the tip of the brush to really kind of outline the shape. Full width strokes going in this curved direction. So this is all solid blue. I'm going to, before this dries, grab a teeny bit of black on the edge of my brush. And then over here, I'm just going to drag in some black paint strokes in there to kind of create the impression that there's some wrinkling in this piece of the fabric. So just a few black strokes. And then I'm going to go to this piece. So if your brush has too much black on it, you can rinse because this part is almost identical in color, but because this isn't too bad, I'm just letting whatever black was still on my brush blend back in with the blue. I need some more blue on my palette. I'm basically doing the same thing, painting this curved piece of the fabric in. We can even add little bits of white in there and kind of let that blend with the blue, and that creates some more kind of this wrinkle effect in the fabric with that white kind of gently blending with the blue. So when you take this white and just use the tip of the brush with those vertical, or we're going diagonal, but you're using the tip of the brush to do thinner paint strokes. So you let that white gently blend with that blue, but not all the way, and that creates that sort of wrinkle look in the fabric. Next, I'm going to switch back to my number 4 round brush, and I'm going to use Mars Black to do some outline work, specifically on the yellow part of the tent. So the edging of that is black. So I'm going to do a relatively thick outline just on the edge of the yellow part of the tent. It's going to define that yellow area better, and it's going to make that blue part look like it's behind the yellow part. So I'm going to do that all the way around, just on the edge of where the yellow is. Right here, I'm actually going to stop about right there because I know the blanket is going to be overlapping that area, so I don't really need to outline all of that. So same thing with right here, the outline, but then stop when I get to the blanket. Next, I'm going to paint little tie bungee cable pieces that are kind of dangling down here between our blue fabric-y piece. So 2 little lines and little dots. And next I'm going to rinse and paint some more trees. So if you do not want to paint more trees in the background, you don't have to. But now that I know where the feet are, I can add more trees kind of where there aren't. So over here on the left where there's just this open area, I'm going to do another larger tree. Next, I am going to paint the birds. So same brush, the number 4 round brush, and you'll need your Mars Black. And you really want to kind of twist that brush to get a very, very thin line out of these birds. So I'm just doing very simple little wing lines, kind of different sizes. And this is just around the area where the sun is. Although if you want to put birds, other parts of the sky, you're welcome to. Then I'm going to paint some rocks. So this is just going to add some interesting textures, some different things in our landscape. And this is going to be kind of in the light green hill area in the foreground, so down here. And this is just black and white, different variations of black and white to make different kinds of grays. And I'm just painting these little rock pieces. Some of them are kind of in clusters and just scattered around the landscape. Some of these lighter color rocks I'm just going to go back over with like a few little kind of curved strokes with the dark gray. Something else we can do to add some interesting texture to our foreground part of the landscape is paint little grass lines. This is optional. I'm going to take my dark green and my round brush and do these very thin little clusters of grass lines. We don't want to go too crazy with this because it might end up looking too busy, but just a few little clusters of tall pieces of grass kind of scattered throughout this area. Of course, if we're doing them lower in the landscape, they might be higher and bigger, and further away, they'll be smaller. The next thing we're going to do is paint the socks. So before we can add fun patterns and colors to the socks, I recommend painting them white just to get a nice opaque finish on the socks. So I'm taking the round brush and the white and I'm outlining the shape of the foot and filling it in solid. So my paint strokes are going in this kind of curved direction as the shape of the foot. I'm going to paint this, I'm going to kind of drag that paint over the blanket line, knowing that I'm going to paint over that anyway, but that just makes sure I have all that foot part painted in and there's no grass showing through that shape. So I'm basically going to do this to each of the socks. Next, I'm going to load Alizarin Crimson Hue Permanent onto my palette. So this is the color that's going to be used for the blanket. Um, any of these colors you can actually change. So if you want to do like an orange blanket or a dark blue blanket, you can definitely change that. So I'm going to use the 3/4 flat brush, and I'm going to go ahead and paint this blanket line. This blanket needs to overlap the part of the sock that we kind of went over the line. So we want to make sure we go back over that. And it goes all the way across. It overlaps the bottom of the tent. So I'm just using the tip of the brush to just kind of outline where this blanket is. You are going to find this Alizarin Crimson is kind of see-through. And so what you're going to need to do is add white into that color so that it helps with the coverage. So add a little bit of white to your brush as you're painting this in, and let that white blend in with this kind of dark magenta color. And we want to kind of make it look like there's wrinkles on this blanket, like it's a soft, fuzzy blanket. We're not going to do the fuzz texture, but we could do these, we can have the white and magenta kind of blend, but not all the way. Kind of like what we did with the blue fabric piece, where we just use the white and let it blend with the dark. And we can even introduce some black in there. So without rinsing the brush, add just a little bit of black. You don't want to do too much because then it will get too dark too fast. But that just kind of introduces some different wrinkle lines in our blanket. And you can just kind of go back with more alizarin and just kind of gently blend it, but not all the way. There should not be any of the tint showing through this blanket, and same with the socks. If part of your white painted over this, you want to make sure everything is covered so this blanket is nice and opaque and solid. The next thing we're going to do is paint the color of the sock. So this is the base color for the sock. I debated for a while what color to do to these socks. I didn't want to do green because it would blend in way too much. Blue could have been a good color, but I'm actually going to make up some random brown color that looks kind of like a camping brown color. And so I'm mixing the magenta with the green and the yellow, and that's going to create this brownish color. Let's get some more yellow. So this is green and magenta so far. I'm going to add more yellow into there. It's going to turn brown. And we can add, if we wanted this to be darker, you can add just a teeny bit of black into it, and lighter, add white into it. So it kind of looks like an orangish brown color, but it stands out against the green background. So whatever color you choose, it just has to have enough contrast because there's a lot of green in that background. So basically just fill up your sock with that color, and after this color dries, then we can go back and add our pattern. Let's go back and make our paint strokes on these socks go in a curved direction. So see how I'm going back over this? I went vertical on these, but I'm going back and doing curves. That gives my foot a little bit more form. For the socks on the left, I'm going to make kind of this grayish green color. You just want to be careful if you are doing green, it has to look like a different green from the green that's in the background. So it can't be a yellow green, it can't be too much of a blue green because of where the sock is at. So let's try this. We're going to do green and yellow mixed together and add white. And then add a little bit of light blue. It makes this kind of like light aqua color. So it's still a little too close to the background. So I'm going to add black into this, and that's going to make it more of this grayish color. I have to add just a little bit more black because I need that contrast. So see how now we have enough contrast here. So we have this grayish green camping color here. And so sometimes it's fun to just make up colors. But same thing, kind of outline it and then fill it in. Make your paint strokes go in curves, and that gives your sock more form, like the sock is wrapped around the foot, so it would be going in that kind of curved direction. Right here, I'm adding kind of darker, so just a tad bit more black to my brush, just to kind of outline that bottom part, and then drag it in, gives it just a little bit of shadow. And I'm going to do the same thing to this one, a little bit of outlining on the far right. Drag it inwards in that kind of curved direction, gives it a little bit of shadow. Next, I'm going to rinse the brush and use just titanium whites. I'm going to do this kind of backlighting thing where I'm outlining the far edge of the socks. I'm going to do this on the top and on the right side. So I'm just loosely outlining the outer edge, so top and a little bit on the right side. Just gives it that kind of light outline. But this is also helpful for letting our socks kind of stand out. So if the orangish brown one has a good amount of contrast against the background, but the greenish ones, adding that just a little bit of that white outline helps them to stand out a bit better. But it's also the backlighting, so that the light would be hitting just behind their socks, kind of giving that little bit of a glow. So next, let's get our coffee cup painted in. The drawing definitely disappeared after we painted all this. So we're just going to take our white and just kind of redraw the shape of that cup. Keep it very simple, very basic coffee mug shape with the handle. And before we can paint this in, I'm just going to paint the side of that cup solid white. The cup is sitting on the blanket. Hopefully it doesn't spill anytime soon. Paint your paint strokes in that like curved direction. That's going to give that cup form. So even though we're painting it solid white first, we're still painting it in that curved direction. I'm going to let this dry before doing color on the coffee mug. And then while that's drying, we can paint our designs on our sock. So here I'm doing white on the ankle, and I decided I didn't really like that look. So I'm going to paint over that. But in the meantime, I'm going to start doing these patterns. So you can change the patterns up if you want. I'm just going to do these like stripes, polka dots, wavy little lines. And it's different, like with the green and the white. You just want to make sure when you're doing your patterns that they're going in a curved direction, because that's the direction they would be going on the sock. So they're not like straight lines, they're curves, stripes. And so if you like that little white heel piece, you can keep it. I'm going to paint over it, disguise it. I'm going to do the same thing to this sock. It does not have to be an exact match. In fact, it could be a fun thing to kind of do mismatched socks if you want to go that route. But again, with these patterns, you want to make sure that you're curving them. So if you're doing lines, make sure your lines are going curved. And then next, I'm going to do the patterns on the orangish brown socks on the right. So I'm going to do simple sort of like plaid cross-hatching lines. Again, you are definitely welcome to be more creative and do different patterns than what I'm doing. So this is just black, and I'm doing the lines that are going this way. Of course, they got to go curved. And then same thing over here, also going curved. And then I'm going to take my red, or my alizarin crimson, my magenta color, and I'm going to do the vertical line. So these ones are not perfectly vertical. They're kind of bending because of the way the sock is. So they're bending and curving in that kind of shape of the foot. So they're uneven and not all the same. And then on the toes of these socks, I'm actually going to do like this color block with the magenta. So there's still a little bit of black on my brush, but I'm just kind of outlining the toe area and then kind of filling the end of that sock in solid. I'm going to do the same thing to this foot. Without rinsing the brush, I'm going to grab a little bit of white and just on the end of that kind of blend lighter color on the top part of the toes and down into the darker part of that. Give that a little bit of highlight. And next I'm going to go back and touch up the blanket. So with the Alizarin Crimson, and you may find you don't need to touch up the blanket, but if there's parts where you painted over, you just want to go back and make sure the blanket is covering all the bottom part of that sock. So I'm just going back kind of with a second coat, just loose, kind of wavy paint strokes to kind of give that blanket the impression it has wrinkles of the fabric. We can paint our coffee mug next if the white layer is dry. I'm going to do a light blue. This is the same color we used in the sky. Again, you can change the color of the coffee mug if you want it to be a different color. And before I paint that in, I'm going to go in the inside of this and paint that black. So this is the number 4 round brush and Mars Black. That little kind of oval opening. I'm doing that solid black. Doing a little bit of shadowing under this cup, so I'm taking that black and just kind of loosely doing these sort of left and right strokes underneath the cup. And then I want to do maybe a little bit of outlining on the top edge of the blanket. Just a very thin sort of loose line up here. Gives that just a bit more definition. And then we can go ahead and paint our coffee cup blue. So I'm going to rinse all this black off and dry and use the color light blue permanent. Even if it's still maybe a little bit wet, it's fine. If that white mixes with our blue, it's not going to be the end of the world. So I'm going to take this, and again, we're going in the curved paint strokes. You can outline the shape of the mug, and then the inside, it's going in a curved direction. On the right side of the mug, I'm going to take this white and kind of drag it inwards in a curved direction. So it just gives it that little bit of lightness on the right side. And then I'm going to outline that top part of the rim. Take my white, maybe add a little bit more white over here. I am going to rinse my brush off next and go back to the white, and I'm going to do the white spiral steam lines coming from the coffee mug. These both are going this way, and the other one's going to go the opposite way. So 3 lines, 1 large in the middle, 2 medium-sized ones on the left and the right. Next, we're going to do the bear claw that's on the mug, and so we're still using the 4 round brush and Mars Black. I'm watering it down slightly and twisting my brush so that I can get really good control of this detail work that I'm about to paint. So I'm going to just do basic bear claw shape. It's almost like it's an upside down heart that's rounded at the top. Then I'm going to do 5 ovals for the toe prints. I'm going to start over here on the left and do just like one little stroke to form those oval shapes. 1 on the left, 1 on the right, 1 on the top center. These ones are smaller than the ones on the left and the right. The 3 in the center are smaller. So there's 5. And if we have room, we can do the little nail lines. Just little tiny marks that kind of go to a point. Then I'm going to add a little bit of shadowing. So grabbing black, a little bit of blue also on my brush, just kind of outline the left part of the cup more blue on the brush because I'm going to blend that in. So this just ends up being like a dark light blue. And just on the left, kind of drag that over, and then it gives it a little bit of darkness on the left without it running too far into the bare paw print. If there's any leftover chalk lines, you can erase those simply by taking a clean wet paintbrush and just going back over the chalk. You just want to make sure you're not going to run that into any wet paint. And then I'm going to redo my spiral lines with another coat of white to ensure that they are extra bright white and they stand out. Some final touch-ups in this painting could be adding a very thin white outline to our blue part of the tent. Just a little bit of highlight towards the edge. I did this mostly towards the top. And here I'm just going back in and just kind of lightly dry brushing this white, adding a little bit more highlight to the fabric in that area. And I'm going to add a little bit more alizarin and white to the blanket just to add maybe some more highlight in the blanket area. You could also emphasize how the blanket would be lighter where it's draped over the legs, so you can kind of make this kind of curved lump in the leg areas of your blanket. So you just take this and you do white and magenta curve just on the parts where the legs are. And this is the conclusion of how to paint Cozy Camp Morning. Hope you enjoyed this one. Thanks for watching, and thanks for painting with me.